Hey everyone, thank you for watching. Today we're going to show you how to draw a pine cone, so grab your pencils and let's get drawing. The first thing that you need to know about drawing a pine cone is that there are many different types of pine cones. We're going to draw one common one, so it'll typically resemble this kind of shape. Kind of pointy at the top and then kind of go down like that. Pine cones have these kind of these bits that kind of open up. So towards the bottom half, we're going to draw them somewhat closed. Around the middle, they'll be half and half, and at the top, they'll kind of be open. So that's the perspective of the pine cone that I'm going to draw for you today. So if you didn't know, pine cones really only come from pine trees. That's the only place that pine cones come from. Simple as that. Pine tree produces a pine cone. So at the bottom, what you want to do is, typically the pine cone does have a point. So you do want to kind of be on point over here and have a bit of a curve at the bottom, but not much of a curve, just the tiniest little bit. Same on this side, you want to have just the tiniest bit of curvature over there. Pine cones don't really have a rounded bottom. They're really more of a come to a point. In this particular one, of course, there's all kinds of different shapes. So we're going to draw the bottom first, and then we'll move our way up, because the top side has a different kind of look to it. So at the bottom, what you really want to do is just draw the edge of these kind of bits that come off the pine cone. So they kind of have a shape. It's hard to describe. Not exactly round, not exactly an oval, but in a way that they kind of connect. If you've ever seen a pine cone up close, they kind of connect into each other and they kind of work together. So you can kind of see over here, if this is one bit over here, this creates an opening over here that will kind of produce another nice and kind of twined pieces, almost like a puzzle, if you will. On this side, we're kind of drawing it from the perspective around the side, so they will be a little more smaller on the side, right? And over here, we're gonna create another one as well. So we're gonna kind of repeat this process. So keep it going, keep following along. And we'll do that over here as well. I'm not going to rush this. I'm really going to make sure that we take our time. And I'm purposely leaving a little bit more dark space in between each bit. So it's actually on purpose that we're actually leaving the space around there as well. The reason is because as we move our way up, the spacing will get more and more and more. So we're going to go from bottom to top. Okay? I purposely drew this one floating because I want to add some of that dark space around there. Okay. So actually the pine cone and the pine tree are actually part of a group of plants that date back to prehistoric times. The group of plants actually have naked seeds, so seeds without some sort of protection. If you've ever seen another type of tree in which there are other seed types, they're oftentimes protected, and they have kind of somewhat of a shell. I think the maple tree might have that. So this type of tree does not have protection to its seeds, so the pine cone is actually there specifically for protection. So that's kind of the reason behind the pine cone, if you're curious about that. I just want to repeat that at the bottom, we're really not making a lot of space between each piece. We're really just trying to keep them compact. So I want to make sure that that's clear, so I just wanted to kind of fix that up right down there. So at the bottom, each piece really doesn't have a lot of spacing around it, and I just want to make sure that that's clear as well. You can also see that these kind of curvatures create the shape of the bottom. You don't necessarily want a smooth line at the bottom. You want to leverage these bumps to create your space at the bottom, your pattern. So in fact, one could also just erase that line there and erase this line over here and then continue the line out. So we're going to keep doing that. We're actually going to keep on doing that. Keep on trucking, as they say. So there's another piece, and around that I want that to be dark. I'll go with some light shading for now, and we will fill that in at a later time. Let's continue by drawing some of the outer pieces here. Keep it somewhat small. Do the same over here. Because remember, these pieces on the side are actually, you want to draw the perspective of it, so they are much smaller than some of these pieces at the front. And if we can pull this off, it'll look a lot better in terms of being 3D as possible, right? As realistic as possible. So follow along, we're going to keep this moving. So hopefully you're following along just like me. Hopefully this is just something you're working on as well, but if not, that's fine. If you're just following along and drawing, or not drawing, or just watching, great. You know, we're happy to have you here and being a part of our channel and watching. We really appreciate that. I don't know if you noticed, but in the more recent videos, we're giving you some facts as well. So we figured we might as well give you some nice information as well, in addition to creating some nice artwork. Whoa. That eraser went flying off the table, so let's try to avoid that. So I think over here what I want to do is, as realistic as possible, I want to have a bit of an indentation, so I'm actually going to draw a piece like this and then continue over here and kind of show this coming together in that way. And then this piece would have another piece in the background, so kind of something like that. Okay. Certainly want it to be realistic. In fact, if I did that on that side, maybe I could do something somewhat similar to that, in the sense of just giving it a bit of a realistic shape. Okay. Great. So we're still working on this, we're still putting it together. What will happen is these smaller pieces will naturally get bigger. You can even see by this piece over here. So what I want to do is actually start getting some of these bigger cone-like pieces showing. So this will actually come together a bit faster as a result. So let's work on that. And let's do that in an efficient way as possible. So fill in the gaps. Whenever there's kind of an obvious gap, you can just draw in a piece. Somewhat of a lemon, somewhat of an oval, somewhat of a circle, kind of in between, isn't it? that's kind of what we're drawing over here. So. And they are all a little different. Some have more of a point towards the tops, some don't. So it really just depends on the piece you're drawing. In fact, watch as I draw this piece right over here. Because that piece is coming straight at us, directly to us, you actually don't see much of a 3D effect. It actually looks like, hard to explain, but almost like an oval that kind of looks like that, really, because that's coming straight at you. So you're gonna have direct shading around it. And you'll see at the top that this piece actually points up, so you're actually gonna draw the base of that piece as well. So you'll see there's all these different angles. I guess when you draw a pine cone, you're really just drawing all of these different angles that exist in there, so it's quite interesting. By the way, I'm using the 5B, kind of a middle of the road pencil, and I feel that we'll use some others for shading, but I feel like it's a good choice, so hopefully you are following along with that as well. Okay, so let's do that. So what happens on the side over here, because for the middle part, so this was the base, for the middle, the pieces start opening up, and at the top they're fully open, so these are actually going to start looking a lot more open. So in drawing that, we're actually going to have a piece that kind of looks like this, something like that. I know it looks a little different than below, but stick with me here. We're going to kind of draw that and fill in the shading around it. Okay. We always say that things don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have the perfect, the absolute, greatest drawing. Our channel is really here to help you learn to draw, as well as kind of discover some interesting facts about the items we're drawing as well. So hopefully that is what you're getting out of this channel. Notice the size, notice things getting a lot bigger over here. Really interesting to see. So if you didn't know as well, pine cones actually open up and release their seeds when it's warm. So it's easier for the seed to germinate if you're familiar with that concept. So that's one thing that the pine cone does. And they also close their scales to protect the seeds from cold temperatures, wind, and even animals that might try to eat them. So that's kind of some of the reasoning behind why the pine cone exists, and as opposed to some other trees that give off seeds that are protected. So again, other trees give off seeds that are protected, so there's actually nothing to worry about. Nature has created the pine cone as a protection mechanism, really, to help with the seeding of the pine tree. So it's definitely something else to keep in mind as well. I'm going to draw this one just a little bit different, more like a smile, more like a half circle, half something or other there, and shading all around it. We're going to fix the shading. I know the shading is very light right now. We're going to actually make it nice and dark with the 7B or something a little darker. We're going to have a piece coming out over here as well. I'm going to have a piece over here. The great thing about drawing a pine cone is that they're all in different spaces. There's not necessarily pattern in which they have to be in a row. They are, you know, for the most part, pretty sporadic and random, which is nice because you don't have to worry about you know, making mistakes or in terms of lining things up. So as we continue to draw, I'm going to keep this going. I'm going to put one over here. Let's fix that little piece there. Now, as we get to this middle zone, this middle of the middle zone, this piece you can actually start to see some of the 3D effect of it, and same over here. So same over here, we're going to start to see some of these pieces like this. Over here, we're actually going to do that again. And we're going to kind of, okay, you can kind of see, and that's what these pieces are over here, right? There's going to be a big space over here. I think what we're going to do is probably just keep the space around this one. And then we're going to draw something like that. We'll get another one over here. Okay. And then we'll get somewhat of a smaller one over here. Something like that. In fact, I don't like how wide that is. The reason is because if we're going to capture the 3D effect of having some pieces at the side, this has to be a bit smaller, and actually so does this piece over here. We're probably going to get, yeah, something like that. And we're probably going to want something like that. Okay. And around this corner, so this piece is obviously, you know, fairly out to us, we're probably going to show that there's a piece over here as well. And that probably looks something like that. Okay. So you can kind of see this thing starting to come together, which is quite nice. I kind of said every piece is different. Notice that this shape and that shape are very, very different. Even this piece I'll draw over here, you know, very different as well. So this is kind of the interesting part about drawing a pinecone as well. I'm only going to do the shading between the pieces. I'm actually going to shade this a bit later, but for now we'll just do some lines like that. Okay, you'll kind of see this come together. Go. So you kind of can see it starting to take shape. The pinecone does, you know, shape up, and towards the top, some of these pieces will start to look a little smaller, not as small as some of these little pieces at the bottom, but they will start to look smaller. So let's continue in doing that. And there continues to be more spacing at the top as well. So you may notice that as well. So another fact is pine cones can actually stay on a tree for more than 10 years before dropping to the ground. I didn't know that. 10 years is a long time for a pine cone to sit on a tree. I mean, I guess some can fall a lot faster than that, but for them to stay up to 10 years on one tree is quite incredible when you think about it. So wow, really interesting to see that. And again, on the sides, they're going to be smaller because we're actually drawing the perspective of around the side. So this piece over here is going to, you want to go in, right? You want it to look like it's protruding out the side. It's kind of the best way to explain that to you. Same with that. We'll get a small one over here because I feel like that's kind of representative of that. And let's get a couple more over here. Notice that line I just drew kind of went away. That was probably not the best direction to go. You sort of want to go towards the center. Like these lines should really go to your perspective point in the middle. So keep that in mind. I actually quickly went too much to the side, and I don't think it looked right. So that's the reason why I corrected that as well. At the top, things are really open. So we really want to get the perspective of these, pieces really open towards the top. Okay. Right at the top, you typically will have some pieces that are very clearly out on their own as compared to the bottom. So you'll probably have some pieces that look like this, where they're really, really out on their own. In fact, out of here, I might just put one more piece over here, and we'll get one more at the top. And that'll pretty much be it. I think that's all we're really going to draw over here. I mean, we could get another piece to show around the back. That would be farther back, but and maybe one more over here. Again, for the perspective element. So that was kind of like the shell of the pine cone. You can really see that this is a great starting point, but we really want to make sure that we get some proper shading. So what you want to do is jump over and grab your 7 or 8B, and let's get some shading in here. Let's get some really nice dark shading, right, especially around the middle point. This is definitely an area that you want to shade really well. I'm going to move over to the 8B, and if you're wondering what I just did, I just pressed down on the tip because I just sharpened it, but I actually would like it to be a little more rougher with the shading, so I just kind of press down, just like that. I don't know if you ever do that. Let me know in the comments. So follow along, I'm just going to keep doing this shading over here. In fact, you know what I really want to do right now? I think I'm going to speed this part up. Some of this shading takes a lot of little intricacies and has a lot of intricacies and takes detail. Let's speed this part up. I'm gonna just push forward, speed this part up. I'll come back to you in a minute or so, okay? Be right back. Okay, so we're back from doing the shading, and you can kind of see how this is starting to come together. If you notice, what I did was I just got really dark with the 8B towards the bottom and the inner parts, as well as on the lower part of each piece. I wanted to make sure that the 8B was represented there. So I was tempted to keep going, but I thought, let me get back on camera, let me kind of, guide and just show you exactly how this is being done. What I would say is, at this point, I might be inclined to kind of use my smudging technique and just kind of let some of this lead blend into each other. It could look really, really nice. You certainly don't want just white at each of these tips. In fact, we missed one over here, so let's get some shading on this piece as well. Great. So what I would say is use your fingers or any technique you want to create some smudging and some fill. As it starts to come together, what you'll notice is that you want to correct each of these pieces, right? So in correcting, you might want to grab something like a 5B and just redraw, that piece, that outer line piece, because it does tend to blur into each other, and it'll actually look a lot more realistic if you can just fix those lines. And again, they're somewhat random, not exactly like a lemon, but sometimes like a lemon. So let's go through each one together. I think we missed a shading on this piece here. That's what I'm just going to go back to do. Okay, so I'm just going to keep going through, fix up some of these lines. We're actually going to have to do this again, but this is just the middle point of fixing up some of these reference lines. The other thing that you want to do is I would go back to the 7B and just kind of try to create somewhat of a sense of a perspective here and a bit of a 3D effect with each of these pieces, because you don't necessarily want them looking like they're flat. I know right now they kind of look like that, so what I would say is just draw a few pieces that come, around like that, and make these pieces look like they're somewhat 3D-like. I like to do that with just a few lines coming up and away and down and away, and then using your smudge dip technique to fill it in. So I'm going to speed this part up again, so just to kind of keep things moving for you, and so I'm not rushing as well. So I'm going to speed this part up. I'll be right back and we'll touch base shortly. Okay, so we're back from doing that shading, so hopefully you're following along. Hopefully you're drawing as well. Hopefully you're doing exactly what we're doing over here. What I'm going to do now with instruction is grab my 8B and continue just making sure that my shading is really, really well represented here. You typically want to go darker as you go at the bottom of the pinecone piece. So if this is one piece right here, you want to go darker as you go deeper inside the pinecone, right? So that would make a lot of sense. And as you kind of go towards the top, the shading gets a lot lighter. So that's really what I'm doing here. I'll go through this with you step by step. So follow along, we'll do this together. And I'll make sure that this is as clear as possible for you as well. So. You can see for the most part that the shading is quite representative. It is darker as we go more inside the pine cone, but I just want to make sure that it's really showing well. It creates for a really nice sense of 3D effect as well. So I'm just going to make sure we do that together. So just bear with me. We're going to go through this together. So, interesting fact time, pine trees actually produce male and female pine cones. So male and female pine cones. I believe the male, well, first off, sometimes on the same tree, sometimes not. The pine cones we see are typically female pine cones. The male pine cones are smaller and really hard to see. You may never even see a male pine cone in your whole lifetime, they say. So that's something that's really interesting, and yeah, just really interesting concept of that. I think the male produces pollen and can fertilize the female pine cone, I believe. Or is it the other way around? Now I'm starting to doubt my own facts. Anyway, one of them produces pollen and one of them doesn't, so I think the male produces pollen. I bet there's one fact that you're wondering, and I haven't said it yet, and the answer is yes. Pine nuts come from pine cones. So if you're wondering where pine nuts come from, they come from pine cones, believe it or not. Hard to believe. Pine nuts are great. It's kind of seed-like food, and myself, I put them on salads and things like that. So I don't know if you're a salad eater, but I am, and pine nuts are really good for that. You can roast them. You can use them in a lot of different recipes, actually. Okay, so we're starting to see this come together. I'm just going to continue using my smudge technique to just kind of let the lead blend into each other. I really feel like this can make or break your drawing. I feel like with the smudging like this, things start to come together. Things really start to look like they belong together. So hopefully, this is something that you see as well. Hopefully you're also drawing this piece as well. So let us know. Please comment below. We love hearing from you. We want to know like how you're doing, and if there's anything that you're kind of struggling with, we want to know in the comments. That's why we try to answer every comment. I don't know if you noticed, but every comment we try to answer every single one. So please leave your comments. We want to know. We want to hear from you. thing that I'm fixing up right now is these lines that I drew. Although they're great, you don't want to have too much separation from the top to the base. It kind of looks like it's out of place. So what I'm trying to do is just add some shading so that it looks a little more natural. And I'm going to do that by just drawing some side-to-side lines at the top. In fact, let me change this up a bit. By doing that, it creates less of a aggressive change in tone. You don't really want your tones to look like, you know, you have an out-of-place line, for example. You want it to look very natural and very realistic. So blending some of these shades together helps you do that. And that's all I'm doing right now. So I'm just gonna try to let some of these lines bleed into each other. And you can see already that rough transition from line to line is even starting to go away as I do this. So yeah, not something you really want to have. So you can also kind of see that's starting to look a lot more realistic as well. The last thing I'll do is just clean up the sides. Maybe a lot of smudging really has the effect of messing up the outer parts of the drawing. So we'll just grab the eraser, just kind of clean up around the sides. And then we're done. So I'm just gonna finish this up real quick. Hopefully you enjoyed the drawing. Hopefully you enjoyed the facts. I think we've all seen pine cones at some point of our life. I don't know if you're in an area where pine cones are readily around you or not. I know when I grew up, we had pine trees around our house, so every day I'd see a pine cone. So I don't know, do you have pine cones where you live? Let us know. Right, so I think that's pretty much it. I think that does it for our pinecone drawing. So I really hope you enjoyed that. I hope you practice. I hope this drawing works for you. Let us know in the comments how it went. Thanks very much and have a great day.